Hello, Daz Studio enthusiasts. This is Not From This World, and I want to welcome you back to my tutorial series. Now, before we get started with the tutorial today, I just want to say thank you. With all of your help, I have reached my 3,000 subscriber goal, and I couldn't be more pleased. So for all of you subscribers, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And if you haven't subscribed, make sure you do that, and let's get up to 4,000. So for today's tutorial, I want to review a little bit about the background. I've had several patrons ask me to reiterate how to add backgrounds to your scene. Let's review backgrounds. Now, I usually add backgrounds to keep things simple. So if I want to put like a sunset through a window or a starry night, something like that, that's when I usually add backgrounds. And when you start off, you're going to notice that when you render without any background, you're going to just render a scene that has these boxes. And in a previous video, which you should check out, I talk about why these boxes are important. It has to do with transparency. And so we can add things to the background post-work, like through Photoshop or GIMP. But you need to have a PNG file, and you need to save your work as a PNG file. And so check out my other video. It'll talk more about this in detail. I don't want to focus on this today because I want to show you what to do with simple backgrounds. So we're going to get out of that, and I'm going to take Milica here, and we're going to add just some simple backgrounds to show you how to do that. And then I'm going to show you a trick to add more detailed backgrounds if you want to add something like a cityscape or a mountain range behind your scene. And then after that, we're going to talk about some definite limitations to using backgrounds. And then I'm going to have a plug for an older video of mine that really gets around some of those background limitations. All right, so let's get to it. All right, so the first thing I'm going to show you is how to get a simple background into your scene. And to do that, we are going to go to our environment. And if you notice, the environment is going to be defaulted to none. If we select that tab and go to backdrop, we can now select a backdrop, or we can select colors. I like to select colors when I'm doing preliminary work. So for example, I will set the background to maybe a darker gray color. And so when I render characters for commissions and I'm trying to get the characters correct, I will often just have the character by themselves with a gray background so that my client can see the character and then approve it. So it's kind of cool that you can select colors. Once you do that and you render, you're going to see that it's going to render without these boxes, and it's going to render that gray background. If you want to get rid of that and go back to the boxes where you have transparency, just simply select your tab and go back to none. And that will render without any background. You can also, in the backdrop tab, you can also select visible in render and turn that off. And whatever background you have will not be rendered. So you'll have those boxes and the transparency again, which is kind of nice. Okay, so let's add a background. Now, the first thing that you're going to have to do is find a simple background. And I've done this just by Googling. So for example, if we want a sunset, I'm just going to type in sunset background, and we're going to get all of these hits. And you can choose one that you like. Of course, we need to be careful about copywriting and that kind of thing. But for the most part, you can find some nice sunsets. For these simple backgrounds, I am not looking for any detail, so I usually don't choose ones with trees and things like that, although you can. But a picture like this here, where we have a sunset wallpaper, this is a nice picture to choose. So I can select it, right click it, go to Save Image As. And what I've done is I've created a texture folder, and I can save that image to my texture folder, and then I have it. So once you have your images for the background that you like downloaded onto your computer, go to the arrow here where it says background and just click on it, and then go to Browse. And I have my texture folder right here, so I can just select any of those sunsets that I like. So if I just select this one, see, it puts that sunset behind Milica. So if I zoom out, you're going to notice that we've got this sunset. Another thing that we need to do is if you have any colors, it's going to affect your background. So because I have this gray color selected in my background is going to be dark. So what I want to do is I want to go into my background color and select white, and then that is going to make it more vibrant. What's really cool is you can increase or decrease the color of your background by selecting these colors. And so I can make it darker or brighter if I select the colors. And I try and keep that from white to black. But, if you select like a orange color, you're going to have an even more vibrant background. So you can change the colors of your background image by adding or getting rid of different colors with the background. So keep that in mind. So another cool thing is within this backdrop tab, I can flip my background image. So I can flip it vertically up and down, or I can flip it horizontally. And this is nice because it can add some variety to your backgrounds if you're doing multiple pictures. Now, if I want to change my background, I can just select that picture, and I can either select none to get rid of it. So now it's just showing our white background because I have white selected as a color. Or I can just go back to Browse and I can find a different image and make that the background. Okay, so what do I do if I want to add a more detailed background? Like I said, I often just use simple backgrounds for sky, sunsets, stars, that kind of thing. But I can also use the background for more detailed pictures. Now to do that, I'm just going to find a picture I like. In this case, I'm going to go back to Browse, and I want to show you a picture that I selected for a comic I did a while back that is of like the Roman cityscape. This is a much more detailed picture. And so if I select that as my background, I'm going to have to change my scene a little bit. So I'm going to hide this fence. And then you can see that it looks like Milica is standing in front of a cityscape, like maybe she's on a hill and she's overlooking this cityscape. Now, this is pretty cool, except you're going to notice a couple things. First of all, you're going to notice that the image is distorted. And it's distorted because it either gets compressed or stretched out to fit the background. So although I like the background, it is compressed. So we have compressed the image to fit onto the background. Now we can fix this, but it takes a little bit of manipulation. First of all, if I go to my render settings and I go to general, you'll notice that I like to render in what's called the active viewport. And I just like this selection. We have a bunch of different selections that we can choose from. So I've talked about this in another video as well. So we can change the render settings to like Ultra HD or a smartphone portrait if we want to make a picture for our phone, or we can change the dimensions of the image. So for example, if I just select a different one, see, it compresses and changes that viewport so that we get a more detailed render. Now, with this background, all I have to do is go back to my environment, go back to the background, and then hit the little menu tab up here. And when I do that, I can automatically adjust the background so that it's not compressing or stretching out my image. And to do that, I just hit adjust aspect ratio to backdrop. And when I do that, it is adjusting our picture to fit the picture in the background. So you can see now, if I go back to that render settings, I am no longer in the active viewport. I am in custom, and we now have the backdrop image displayed correctly. So I can zoom in now and get Milica in the position that I like, and I have a background image that is not distorted anymore. So you can see it looks like she's standing on top of a hill overlooking the city. So this is one way that you can add your backgrounds. So as I've shown you, putting a background in is pretty easy, but you need to realize that there are quite a few limitations to this. And one of the big limitations is that this background is not going to be able to be manipulated. So if I rotate my scene in any way, you notice how the background is not changing at all. In fact, I can rotate all around and the background never changes. And this is going to be an issue if you want to have multiple pictures with multiple angles, because you won't be able to change that background. Now, this is sometimes where our flip horizontal, flip vertical can come in handy, because you can kind of change the background a little bit with that for multiple pictures. However, it's very limited. So you're going to have to get creative and maybe find multiple pictures that are very similar or the same, but show different images in the background to get multiple pictures. And that is a huge limitation. Another limitation with backdrops is that they're not influenced by any of your lights. So we can add spotlights and get Milica looking really good, and the background is never going to be affected by that. So that's where you might need to add a color to darken up the background, something like that. If we want a shady, or maybe it's getting later in the day, so we're going to have spotlights on Milica, and then we want the background to also kind of show that. Just remember that the background is not at all affected by your lighting. Now, there is a way that you can add backgrounds that add a lot more detail, and that is called HDRI. And I have a video that really goes through how to set up HDRI. How you can get more advanced backgrounds is through HDRI. So check out this video here, and it will show you how to do HDRI in a lot of detail. And these are really cool because you can add a background and then move around the background and get some really detailed images. And you can change multiple images with different backgrounds. It's very cool. And we can change the lighting. HDRI is manipulated by your lighting. So we can make it brighter, darker. We can make sunsets. We can make sunrises, middle of the day, whatever you want. So check out that video. All right, well, I hope this video helps you out a little bit, and now you know a little bit more about backgrounds if you haven't used them too much. I'm going to set up a picture for a thumbnail, and I want to wish you all a happy week. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. I love your comments. Gives me lots of ideas on future videos. And until next time, happy rendering.